Aloha, and welcome to the monthly public presentation of the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii. Since 1990, the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii has been following our mission of promoting human health, animal rights, and protection of the environment by means of vegetarian, whole food, plant-based, vegan education, as we've grown to become one of the largest all-volunteer, nonprofit vegetarian societies in the nation. It is now time to introduce our special guest. We're happy to have with us tonight Pierre. Nutrition and fitness consultant Pierre has trained hardcore athletes, Hollywood celebrities, rock stars, and Fortune 500 executives, assisting a wide range of clientele and people of all backgrounds and fitness levels. John's passion is to help everyone. Credited as being one of the first pioneers in the U.S. to create brain-building classes that enhance cognitive fitness in our geriatrics community. 30 years of experience has provided John with a unique understanding and ability to help others with cognitive challenges. Pierre was recently inducted into the North American Vegetarian Society Hall of Fame and continues to contribute widely to magazines and publications in the area of health and fitness. John is the author of several books, including The Pillars of Health and Strong, Savvy, Safe, available at johnpierre.com, and he has starred in numerous health-promoting DVDs and online programs that reach countless individuals all over the world. John's presentation tonight is entitled The Pillars of Health, Your Foundations for Lifelong Wellness. Please join me in welcoming Pierre.
I want to answer a question. People always say, why do I have to eat more vegetables? Well, think about it this way. If you cut an apple in half, what color does that apple start to turn? It starts to turn brown. It starts oxidizing. What happens if I take a lemon and I squeeze some lemon on the apple? What happens? It stops, right? Keeps it nice and fresh. And that's because of the ascorbic acid, the vitamin C in there. There's, different bioflavonoids and things that are antioxidants. But the bottom line is, the more antioxidants and phytochemicals and these nutrients that we get in our diet, the more they preserve our tissue and they prevent premature aging. And since we live in a world today that as soon as you hit your alarm clock, the buzz, that's a cortisol dump, that's premature aging. As soon as you watch the news, cortisol dump, premature aging. You drive the car, and it's traffic and people are honking, cutting you off, premature aging. You're breathing polluted air, you're drinking chlorinated water, you're eating foods that have high in pesticides, antibiotics, hormones, premature aging. Everything that we're doing today is causing premature aging and inflammation. So your job is to do everything you can to reduce inflammation and reduce premature aging, and that's very simple, because the secrets are found in fresh fruits and vegetables. It's all those different antioxidants. And it's not about taking one. It's not about taking lutein or beta-carotene or beta-cryptozanethine or anything like that. It's about getting the whole foods in there. It fascinates me when you've heard of macular degeneration, right? It's interesting that people will talk about macular degeneration and their doctor will recommend that they take 200 micrograms of lutein, right? So they'll give them a pill that has the 200 micrograms of lutein. Well, there's over 600 different carotenoids. That's only one, lutein. If you take a cup or two of kale, you can get 29,000 micrograms of lutein and zeaxanthin, not 200. And it's all the carotenoids that we need for our eye, even beta-carotene and lycopene for ocular health. It's not just one. So we want to focus on eating whole foods and not necessarily nutritional supplements. And here's the way to do it. I made this concept so simple for my clients, they have no excuses. Every single day you should focus on two things. One is a green smoothie. Now, I didn't say a Slurpee. I didn't say a hyperglycemic event with all this fruit, but I'm talking about a green smoothie. So the majority of that smoothie should be vegetables, some sort of vegetables. So kale, broccoli, bok choy, chard, whatever. Then have some sort of liquid, maybe almond milk or coconut milk, some sort of liquid. You can even use water. You can use oat milk. Some people use soy milk. That's fine. But you want to make sure that once you have your liquid in there, you have your vegetables in there, then you could add a little bit of fruit. The problem with smoothies, and when you see these doctors, and these doctors are all my friends that are anti-smoothie, the problem is it's because everybody's doing a smoothie wrong. They're putting a half a pineapple in there. They're putting 2 bananas. They're putting 2 cups of grapes. It's like this sugar fest. What I'm talking about is basically a blended drink. It's basically blended greens, okay? So the reason why we're trying to do a blended drink or a smoothie is because it allows us to get all that plant matter, all those vegetables in your diet easily, because it's a lot easier to drink it than it is to sit there eating it for a half hour, 45 minutes. Nobody's going to do that today. And that's where a lot of the doctors will say, well, JP, they'll say to me, it'd be great if all these people could eat that. And then I ask them, have you ever worked with children in the inner city? No. Have you ever worked with senior citizens? No. They don't masticate well. They can't chew well. They have poor hydrochloric acid. Their digestive enzymes are horrible. Unless they're blending a drink, they're not going to be able to break apart those fibrous, the cell wall and extract the nutrients. And when you talk about children, they're not going to take the time to eat all this stuff throughout the day. So by blending it, we can take pounds and pounds of plant matter, put it in a liquid, and drink it. Does that make sense? So if you're going to do it, just quickly, don't worry about what vegetables to add. Whatever ones you like, if it's kale or bok choy or celery or cucumber, it's fine. Whatever liquid you like other than dairy is fine. And then just make sure you put a little bit of a sweetener in there. So the best fruit that we could get within reason, at least on the mainland, that's the highest in antioxidants would be blueberries. And it's fine to use frozen blueberries, and if you can get wild, that would be even better. They're higher in antioxidants, they're really, really tiny. But if you have out here papayas, which are wonderful, and mangoes, those are super high in carotenoids, it's fine. Whatever it takes for you to sweeten it up. But I don't want you to put a half a cup of dates in there and all this sugar, because we're not trying to have this rebound hypoglycemia where you get this real big sugar spike and then you come crashing down. You don't want that. You want to basically have slow and steady. So by adding vegetables, and predominantly vegetables, and something low glycemic like berries, it's not going to shoot your blood sugar up. And by the way, if you ever are going to eat something sweet, if you add blueberries to it, the fiber that's in blueberries helps normalize blood sugar. So blueberries are perfect to add to pretty much anything, especially for people who are diabetic. There's pterostilbene in there, which lowers cholesterol. The pigments in there, when you look at blueberries for the brain, the scientific community calls them brain berries. They enhance neuronal communication. They repair damage in the brain. The thing about blueberries, if you can afford it, try your very best to get organic blueberries. That's one of the fruits that you really want to invest in and try to get organic, because they are a heavily sprayed crop. And you're lucky here because you have so many farmers markets that I can tell you the last time that I was here, I was buying so much produce from a little lady who backed her truck up and had all her produce from her yard. She asked me if I was reselling it. And I said, no, this is just what I eat. She couldn't understand it. So you can get so much organic produce here available easily. The reason why you want organic is, think about these words: genocide, suicide, homicide. What do they all mean? Do they mean life or do they mean death? They mean death. Well, let's add pesticide to that. So when you're shutting off the central nervous system of an insect, we're big insects. So you get this accumulation. And you take blow after blow after blow in a boxing match, eventually you're going to get hit lightly, you're going to hit the canvas, but it's because you accumulate all these blows. And it's the same thing with pesticides. That damage is cumulative. So the less that you take in, the better. Does anyone know the food with the highest pesticide? It's not one that's grown. It's not a fruit or vegetable. Unfortunately, it's animal products. It takes a cow about, depending on what size the animal is, about 15 pounds of grain the cow will consume, and it'll produce a 1-pound burger. Now think about 15 pounds of grain producing a 1-pound burger. Now think about 15 pounds of grain that are highly sprayed with pesticides. Some of them illegal if we're buying them from other countries. That we won't use those pesticides here. You take all those pesticides from those grains and you convert that into a 1-pound burger. And then you put that on a white bun, so there's no fiber in the burger and there's no fiber in the bread. And you're eating this pesticide sandwich, and you're giving it to children who have little tiny livers and little tiny spleens, and you're expecting their body to detoxify that? Sorry, it doesn't work that way. That stuff stays in the system, especially if you're consuming it with fat. It gets stored in the fat tissue. And you're not consuming any fiber because there's no fiber in animal products, and then you're eating white bread, there's no fiber there. So that's a dangerous thing. So animal products are the first thing you want to go, animal products and dairy, and then do your very best to get as many fruits and vegetables as you can in. If you can't get organic, don't worry about it, because there's a magical substance in fruits and vegetables that no animal product has. It's called fiber. And fiber chelates, or grabs onto heavy metals and pesticides, grabs onto them and escorts them out the body. So it's always better to eat fruits and vegetables whether they're organic or not. I'd prefer as much organic as possible because it's less blows to your system. Does that make sense? And remember, we have one of the highest rates of infertility and neurological problems in history today. Pesticides cause infertility and neurological problems. So be very cautious with that. So in our shake in the morning, whatever liquid you want, coconut milk, almond milk, soy milk, some sort of green vegetables, doesn't matter what it is, and then some sort of fruit. You're lucky here because you have papayas and mangoes, which are perfect. Bananas are okay. They're just not super high in antioxidants. You know, when you cut them, they start browning right away. They're not super high, but if that's what it takes to get it in, fine. Then try to get the most important seed in your diet, which would probably be ground flaxseed. A quick note about flaxseed. 100% of the time it has to be ground. You never just eat flaxseed because it's got a diamond coating. You can't break it apart. So what you do is just go to the store, buy a pound of flaxseed. 1 month you can buy golden, next month you can buy brown, rotate it, and just put it in your blender for a minute or so, blend it all up, and then store it in your refrigerator or freezer. You don't ever just leave it out because it gets rancid. And you never buy ground flaxseed, because it's going to get rancid, because it's oxidizing. So you make it yourself, it's cheaper, and you store it in the refrigerator or freezer. You start out with about 1/4 teaspoon of flaxseed. Now, why do I say that? Well, I learned in geriatrics very early that flaxseed is a very moving experience. So you start out slow, 1/4 teaspoon, and every day you have a shake, you add a little bit more until you get to 1 tablespoon. 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. Does that make sense? So flaxseed is very good because obviously that alpha-linolic acid in there gets converted into your body into DHA, which is so important for brain functioning. Now, not everybody converts really well, so we're not going to get into the science of that, but if you do have cognitive issues, you may want to think about taking an algae DHA, an algae supplement, but for right now, flaxseed, walnuts, green leafy vegetables, they get converted fairly okay in your body. The younger that you start plant-based eating, the more efficient your body is at converting. If you're new to plant-based eating, our bodies aren't used to converting some of these nutrients, so if you still feel like you have a cognitive fog sometimes, then you might want to take that as a supplement. But I don't want to get into all the science of that right now because that's no fun to talk about. So the only other thing that we're going to add then or do with our smoothie is you're just going to remember to drink that smoothie very slowly. Okay? So make sure it sits in your mouth a little bit, mixes with the amylase, the digestive enzyme already in your mouth, and drink it or eat it very slowly. That's really important. Okay? What I do is I normally intermittent fast just naturally so I don't get hungry till about noon, but I still might make a smoothie, and then throughout the day, even if I eat lunch at noon, I still might sip on that smoothie throughout the day, because I want you to remember this metaphorically, just metaphorically. Every time you're drinking that smoothie, you're coating your tissue in antioxidants, so it's protecting you. It's kind of like having a bodyguard. So you can just sip on that throughout the day, because you've got the blueberries in there, you've got kale, you've got bok choy, you've got the antioxidants in flaxseed, you've got whatever your liquid is, if it's coconut milk, so you've got all these little antioxidants that are protecting you. Now, if you don't like smoothies, you can make a blended soup. A blended soup is just a smoothie that's warm, that's all. Same thing, it's no problem. My recommendation is there's generally 3 vegetables that work good: frozen peas, frozen corn, that's really a grain, and frozen spinach. So let's say we do spinach. We take a pound of frozen organic spinach, put it on the stove with about 3 cups of water, and we heat it up. Okay? Once it's hot, we just dump that right into our blender with 1 avocado, blend for 30 seconds. There's my base. I've got cream of spinach soup in 30 seconds. Done. Now I start adding everything else in. I might add a carrot for a little sweetener or a piece of beet. Then I can add some bok choy. You just play with the recipe, whatever you want. Doesn't matter. And you blend it up, and then you put a little seasoning in there. You have the fat from the avocado. If you don't like avocado, another good thing to use would be sesame tahini, which is one of the highest sources of minerals, particularly calcium. And that thickens things up well. If you're on a low-fat program, you can use hummus. which you've already made yourself without tahini. You just made it with garbanzo beans, garlic, and lemon. Or you can use potato. A potato works as a good thickener too. That's fine. Now, imagine all those vegetables that we put in there. You'd never be able to eat those in one meal quickly. But now we could drink it down very quickly. Okay? I'm not saying it's best to drink it quickly, but if you had to, like a child, every gulp they take, that's like a plate full of vegetables. Every gulp a senior citizen takes in a retirement home or nursing home, that's a lot of vegetables they normally wouldn't get. So are you getting the reason why we're doing this? Yes, it would be better to sit for an hour and eat your meal slowly as you're breathing and relaxing outside under the sun. I guarantee that would be better, but is it realistic? That's why a lot of the doctors that I talk to, I have to explain to them, how many clients do you really work with? It's like when you work online, there's lots of people that are internet gurus, and you ask them, how many clients do you work with? They say, I don't work with clients. Well, yeah, you've got the science down, but you can't apply it to people. People are not going to be spending hours and hours, chanting and going om as they eat their meal. I wish we could, that's ideal, but it's not realistic, at least for the clients that I have. And I work with normal clients too. It's not only celebrities or rock stars I'm working with normal people like you and I. Most people don't have the time. Everybody has the time to drink though, right? Does that make sense? So that would be my first suggestion to increase the volume. The other thing I'd recommend is try to get cruciferous vegetables in your diet as much as you can. So broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, etc. These are the most potent foods out there in terms of preventing disease. And the more that you can kind of crush them and let them sit on the counter, like kale, if you chop it up a little bit, the broccoli, you let it sit, then it forms other antioxidant components in there. And a lot of people don't realize that. Like if you take a piece of kale, if you look at kale, it's got these glucosinolates in there, it's got myricinides, these different enzymes, and when you crush and you chop these up, these substances over here, the glucosinolates and the myricinides, they combine, and then they form maybe the most potent antioxidant or anti-cancer component known, these isothiocyanates. They're very, very powerful. But it really is created when the food is chopped up. So it's very helpful for you to go ahead and take a little time in the kitchen, make things, set it on the side, go work on something else as those new compounds are being formed, just like garlic and onions. Does that make sense? So try to get cruciferous vegetables in as much as you can. Try to get nuts and seeds in your diet as long as you don't have a food addiction. So I work with Chef AJ. We do a program called Ultimate Weight Loss. We work with food addicts. If I recommend 2 to 3 Brazil nuts every other day, how well does that work for somebody who has a food addiction? Well, 2 or 3 Brazil nuts turns into a pound of Brazil nuts, right? A pound of cashews, a pound of walnuts. So if you have an eating disorder or you have a food addiction, then you know what I do for those clients? I give them ground flaxseed. How many people are going to enjoy that? You're not going to have a dopamine blast eating ground flaxseed. So that's how it works. But if you're regular, normal, and you can handle it, you don't have an addiction, you don't have any issues with it, get a handful of nuts in every day, chewed really well to a cream consistency, but really focus on Brazil nuts. Try to get those Brazil nuts in your diet, at least a couple per week. Try to get walnuts in. Those omega-3s would be beneficial. Those are 2 of the most important ones. Make sure the nuts are raw and unsalted, unroasted, unsugared, everything. If you want to soak them, you can. If you want to sprout them, you can. But I don't want to get into that today because you guys probably are just happy to get some nuts in your diet. Now, why do we need nuts? Well, there's been 7 major studies done on the benefits of nuts. There's no question about the benefits of that. But nuts are about our only good source of vitamin E. And vitamin E is a very important antioxidant. It's found in whole grains too, in avocados, but we're not eating enough whole grains. But nuts and seeds, we only need a small amount of them to really blast our amount of vitamin E up through the roof. And there's also minerals, especially Brazil nuts have selenium. Selenium is a trace mineral measured in micrograms. It's found in the soil. Most of our soil today is deficient in selenium and chromium, these little tiny trace minerals that are important. There's antioxidants in your body that are created from other foods or other minerals like superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase. If you don't get enough zinc, superoxide dismutase isn't made. You don't get enough selenium, glutathione peroxidase is not made. So you need to get these minerals in your diet, and most of us aren't getting them in. It's kind of like magnesium. Like 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and it runs over 300 different processes in the body, and one of them is the production of ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. So you need to make sure you're getting these nutrients in. Does that make sense? So a handful of nuts and seeds, what I recommend is to get a bag of Brazil nuts and a bag of walnuts, and then one of your other favorite nuts, and put them all in a jar or a Ziploc baggie, shake it up, and then every day take a little bit of a handful. That's it. That's all you do. You don't need to buy Brazil nuts on Monday and Tuesday eat walnuts and whatever. You don't have to do it that way. Just take a mix, okay? So you want to get those nuts and seeds. Again, the flax seeds are probably our best seed. You could put chia seed in. You could use hemp seed if you want. But in terms of omega-3s, walnuts, purslane, which is a green weed, and then of course flaxseed is probably the highest source, would be really good seeds for you to have. So we got our smoothie, we got our blended soup, we got a little bit of nuts and seeds. Do you have to have grains? You don't have to have grains if you don't want to. If you don't like to have grains, they're fine. I kind of favor more pseudo grains like quinoa and amaranth. I think those are important. But regular grains you don't have to get if you don't want. But you know, let's be honest. People have been eating rice and grains for thousands of years. They've done fine. The real problem is with wheat, the way we've been hybridized things, and the gluten content is through the roof. The pesticide levels through the roof. Those are what's causing a lot of problems. I still recommend to my clients, if they normally eat wheat and gluten, I ask them to get off it for 2 weeks and see how you feel. I just say, just see how you feel. A lot of people feel a lot better. Then I say, don't go back to it. If you don't notice a difference, no big deal. People have been eating grains forever. But I will say this, grains are not necessary. There's nothing mystical, magical in grains that you have to have. If you choose to have them, that's fine. I would recommend if I was stuck on a deserted island and I can only pick one food, I'm going to vote for sweet potatoes. So I'd recommend that you do your very, very best to get some sort of tubers in your diet. If you look at the blue zones, the Okinawans who generally live some of the longest in the world and have the least disability, which is important. It's not just important to live long, it's important to have no disability, where you're bending and squatting and rotating and pushing and pulling and living a healthy life. 80% of their calories is from sweet potatoes. So the majority of their calories are getting from sweet potatoes. Now, have you guys read the blue zones at all? Where the longest lived people work or live. It was interesting because I was talking to Dan Buettner the other week about it. And one of the things that I've been promoting forever is the consumption of legumes, beans, peas, and lentils. Because the one thing I use for 100% of my clients is a ton of hummus. And Dan was mentioning to me, he was talking about when he went to all these blue zones, he said, JP, the one common food they all have in common is large amounts of legumes. Beans, peas, or lentils, all those blue zones. So it doesn't matter if it was in Greece or Italy, Okinawa or Costa Rica or Loma Linda. It's the legumes. The nice thing about legumes, they're a resistant starch. So if you were to eat 100 calories of, let's say, beans, you're not absorbing all that. So for dieting or weight, if you're watching your weight, they're really important. They're a great source, especially of B vitamins and especially protein. But one of the things that they're really important in, they're high in lysine. And lysine is a very important amino acid that can be limiting in the vegan diet if you're not eating enough legumes, because there's not many foods that are high in lysine other than really quinoa, legumes and quinoa. So if you're not eating legumes, you could be missing out on lysine. And lysine does lots of different things, protein synthesis, calcium absorption. It forms like carnitine. Have you heard of carnitine? Carnitine is a very important substance for your heart. It's an antioxidant. It helps shuttle fatty acids through the mitochondria. And carnitine comes from the Latin word carnis, meaning meat. So the meat eaters that we know, they're eating animal products and they're getting carnitine, but vegans have to make their own carnitine. And there's lots of nutrients like lysine, methionine, pyridoxine, niacinamide, vitamin C, and iron. They all form carnitine, right, in your body. But let me ask you this question. Most of those nutrients are hard to get, but if you're not getting beans or legumes in your diet, where are you getting your lysine from? And then all of a sudden you can't form carnitine. See, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle. You just can't be missing one of the puzzles. You don't have the beautiful picture then. You have to get everything in your diet. So I really ask you guys to focus on legumes as much as you can. And hummus is the way that I go with most of my clients, because hummus, once you have hummus, you've got a mystical, magical ingredient, because now when you make soup, I can make cream soup by adding hummus. You have bread or a flat tortilla, that's my spread on there, right? You have a dip, now you can put it there. You want to mix it, that's what I use for salad dressing is hummus. I just use it, and then I mix all my salad up, and I put it in a sheet of nori, and I just put it in there and roll it up. But I would say hummus I use almost all the time, and I encourage my clients to do it. What is hummus made of? What are the ingredients? Garbanzo beans, what else? Sesame, tahini. You can put tomatoes in, yeah, good for you. Lemon and garlic, traditionally, right? Now, if you're following a low-fat diet and you don't want the tahini, you don't have to put it in. I make it all the time without tahini, but you can add it in. But I got news for you, gang. You don't need to use garbanzo beans. You can use red beans. You can use any type of bean you want. You can use peas. You can make a hummus with peas. So the idea is you're just trying to use some sort of legume, but the reason why it's so beneficial is because it's a spread now. So it's got tons of things you can do with it. Does that make sense? So make sure you get that in your diet. And then the other thing is do your very, very best. I know it's not easy, and I've been talking about why it's not easy, but I'm just saying try to find some time throughout the day, if it's one meal or a snack, to eat in a quiet, calm manner and to connect with your food. I'd like you to think, if you could just do it once a day, just think about when you eat your meal, what that little broccoli, how it started with a seed. And then it was in the earth. And then we have all the organisms in the earth. We have the soil, right? We have the sun, we have the rain. Then this plant is growing, right? And then people are working in the fields to grow this plant and take care of it. And then people are taking the plant and, the broccoli, and then they have to transport it. Then it has to go to your store, right? And then you have to get it. It made this long journey to get to your plate. So it really helps you be mindful if you could focus on that and start connecting a little bit more with your food, because there's energies to food. Just like when people eat animal products, there's an energy there. An animal that was getting ready to be killed is fearful for its life, and it's fighting for its life to get out of there. And all these hormones and adrenaline are going into its tissue, and then somebody decides to cut into that tissue and eat that tissue. Imagine the energy you're consuming there. That's why people who have been vegan for a while are very calm and centered and balanced. They're very kind. They're not aggressive. Because what you're eating plays a very large role in the energy with your body. So even though we live in this fast-paced society, I ask, even when I'm working with executives and celebrities, I ask kind of not forcefully, but say, hey, look, this has to be done. One meal or one snack throughout the day, I'd like you to take your time preparing it, thinking about it, chewing it, thinking about where it came from, and eat in a relaxed manner. If we could do that for all 3 meals, it'd be wonderful, but that's not realistic. I'm just being realistic because it's what my clients are like. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Because we have so much to cover. The good news is we can stay till midnight tonight. Lorraine's got the place till midnight because I get warmed up after 2 hours. So no questions. Okay, good. Quick on supplements, just real quick. No matter what age you are, whether you eat meat or not, after age of 40, you better be taking a B12 supplement. So you want to be taking B12. Don't worry if it's cyanocobalamin, methylcobalamin, hydroxy. Don't worry about the source. Just get about 500 micrograms a day. There's an intrinsic factor that gets secreted from your stomach that allows you to absorb B12. As you get older, you start losing that ability to absorb B12. And here's the scary thing. B12 deficiency has same symptoms as dementia. Once you start losing your mind, I'm going to tell you right now, being in geriatrics, there's nothing scarier than that. And B12 not only helps the myelin sheath with electrical impulses travel, red blood cells. It's a very important thing for the nervous system. And B12 deficiency, once it starts getting going, it can be irreparable. And I've had clients that have tingling in their toes and their fingers, and I asked them how much B12 are you taking? They say none. I said, wait a minute, you've been vegan for how many years and you haven't taken any? No. And luckily we caught it, gave them B12 right away, symptoms went away. But it could be very, very scary with a B12 deficiency. So you want to make sure you're getting some B12 every day. Don't worry about the source, but about 500 micrograms a day. And it doesn't matter if you're vegan or not. Vegans for sure, because B12 is a microorganism found in the soil. And so cows and animals are eating it all day long, and then somebody kills the cow, and then you eat her flesh, and you get B12. But there's gentler ways to do it. Hundreds of years ago, when you lived here, or your parents and grandparents, there was B12 everywhere. You just grabbed a carrot and ate it. There was B12. You drink well water, B12. You didn't wash your hands, B12. So it was everywhere, but now it's not, especially with pesticides, basically making everything sterile. And we live in a sterile society. People are washing their hands and using sterilizing agents all the time. Even now, toys actually have a silver coating on it to be antibacterial. So we're terrified of germs today, and it's hurting us. So B12. Did you have a question on B12? Well, nutritional yeast has B12, they fortify it. Just like if you buy almond milk, they fortify it. You don't have to take B12 if you're eating a lot of fortified foods. The problem with fortified foods is they're often fortified with folic acid too, and that's a no-no. You want to avoid folic acid. Folic acid is synthetic folate. Folate is from foliage, meaning green, so every time we eat green leafy vegetables, oranges, and things like that, we get folate, but you don't want folic acid if you can avoid it. There's so much, I want to cover a lot, but I just want to recap. The secret is we need to get more volume of fruits and vegetables. The easiest way to do it is fruits are easy to eat. We don't ever need to blend those because they're fun to eat, but it's the vegetables we need to get more of. So just make the blended smoothie in the morning and make a blended soup. One or the other or both would be ideal. Snacking them throughout the day. Vegetables, make sure you always have some hummus or salsa or black bean dip or something that tantalizes you to want to have it, so whatever it takes to do it. But smoothies and blended soups, in my opinion, are the easiest way. If you're trying to lose weight, when I gave you that recipe for soup, just don't blend everything. Just blend the peas or the spinach with a little avocado and then steam the rest of the vegetables and then put them in the soup. Why don't we blend them if we're trying to lose weight? Well, because are we going to eat it faster or slower if they're whole? We'll eat it slower. So all the studies for weight loss have always shown us when we eat hot soup, and when we have to eat it slow, we kind of get that signal, though, cholecystokinin and these different hormones. You know, you've got ghrelin and leptin, you've got all these different hormones that regulate hunger. Your body starts getting a signal, hey, you've been doing this for a while, you're getting full, so I'm going to shut things down. If I'm worried when I'm working with kids or seniors, I don't want them to get full. I want them to drink everything, so I blend everything. Okay? We're going to take B12. You get all the sun that you need here, hopefully. On the mainland, people are massive vitamin D deficiencies. And there's vitamin D receptors in the brain. It's very important, not only for bones, but it's a hormone, really. So it's very important to regulate your moods, too. When I work with clients who have depression, mild to moderate depression, if they're not getting enough sun, then I give them about 3,000 to 5,000 international units of vegan vitamin D taken with a fat, because it's fat soluble, so absorbed in fats. Okay? And then there's other supplements we could take, of course, but that's a whole nother story. I want to cover a lot of information today. So from a dietary standpoint, you know my book, I cover a ton of stuff on the first chapters on nutrition. You literally can spend weeks just talking about fiber. I mean, there's so much stuff, supplements alone, there's so much to cover. But right now, for new people who are here, vegans who have been doing this a while, this is probably old news, but for new people, I just want you guys to know about increasing your volume. And the easiest way to get more vegetables in and fruits is just smoothies and soups. That's it. Now, probably 15 years ago or so, I was at a conference, and I'm teaching fitness at these conferences often. And I woke up, and it was just getting sun. The sun was coming up, and I looked out my window, and there was Dr. Ruth Heydrich running. And it must have been at 5:30 in the morning. And I thought to myself, I knew who she was because she's legendary. I said, you got to be kidding me. I'm just waking up, and I'm getting ready to teach fitness classes, and here's Dr. Ruth Heydrich already running out there. I couldn't believe it just as I opened my window. This morning, I'm not kidding you, I got up at 4:30, and at 10 to 5, I walked out and opened my window just to see if Dr. Ruth was running or not, because I knew she lived here. But she is a legend in this movement and such an inspiration to everybody. And that brings up my next topic, which is movement. If there ever was a fountain of youth, it's positively movement. And the most dangerous thing that we can do is what 85% of us or 90% of us are doing right now, which is sitting. Think of sitting as the new smoking. It's one of the most dangerous things that we can do is be in this compromised position all day long. Because think about this. You went to bed and you slept 7 or 8 hours. Any movement there? No. Then you get up, you sit down, you eat breakfast. Any movement there? No. You read the paper, watch TV, any movement there? No, you're still sitting. Then you get in your car, you drive to work. Any movement there? No. Then you get to work, you sit down and you type. 8 hours there. Then you get home, you're driving, no movement. You get home, you're exhausted, you sit on the couch, you eat dinner, no movement. We've engineered movement out of our life. Movement is one of the most important things you can do in the entire world, because every time you move, this is what I want you to remember. Every time you move, you're basically turning a key, putting it in the body, and turning on a system. It doesn't matter if it's your immune system, your metabolism, right? If your neurological system. These are all things that your body is losing. When you look at the blue zones, the people who live the longest and have the least disability, every 20 minutes they're moving. When you're looking at primitive people, they're moving not for fun. They're not exercising at a gym or doing that. They're moving because that's their life. You go to Indonesia, they're squatting, they're sitting, they're down in this position eating, they're playing games, they're cooking. And then people say it's amazing, they're in 80 and 90s and they can bend down like that. Must be because they're Asian. No, it's not because they're Asian. It's not that at all. It's because that's what they've been doing their whole life. They don't have furniture. Why did we decide to have a chair that's this exact height that you have right now? What if I created a chair and I sawed those legs off by 4 inches? What would happen for the next 10 or 20 years to your flexibility and your strength? Your squat would be deeper, so not only would you have to lift up higher, you'd have stronger legs, your flexibility would be better. It's kind of like dairy products. Who decided that we're going to milk cows? Somebody just decided that. And if I said, do you want some zebra milk? People would be like, what, are you crazy? Zebra milk? Well, what if we decided to milk zebras a long time ago? Right? And it's the same thing with chairs. If we didn't invent the chair, we wouldn't have as many problems as we have today. So, let me just start by saying this. If you want to maximize your health and fitness and longevity, here's the secret. It's not the 20-minute workout in the morning or the half hour at the gym. It's not that. If you do that, bless you, that's wonderful. But it's how much do you move the other 23 and a half hours of the day. The other 23 and a half hours of the day is what counts, not the half hour in the morning. Because if you go and you run in the morning, you lift weights for a half hour, an hour, and then the rest of the day you're sedentary, forget it. You're not benefiting your body. There's something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically all the movement that you get throughout the day that's not exercise. That's where most of your calories are burnt. That's how you're increasing flexibility and mobility. You're getting squats, you're reaching, you're pushing, you're pulling, you're stretching. There's common postures we have today. Sitting is a common posture. Standing and lying down are common postures. You need uncommon postures. Squatting is uncommon. Rotating is uncommon. Reaching is uncommon. Hyperextending is uncommon. Those are the things you need to be doing throughout the day. If you don't practice those things, you're not going to get good at them. You're really good at sitting. Everybody in this room is an expert at sitting. But you're not good at the other things, and how could you be? If you don't practice playing piano, you're not going to be good at piano. So if you don't practice, basically squatting, rotating, reaching, pushing, and pulling, you're not going to be good at those things. And those are what we call primal motions. Those are things that you're going to need to do the rest of your life. Let me just get a chair and show you what I've seen for 25 years in retirement homes. And this is, it'll appear funny, but it's not. Every retirement home I've ever gone in, and I've worked in them a long time, sometimes 3 times a day, this is what I see. This is how people sit, because they no longer have the ability to lower themselves, not only neurologically, but strength-wise, so they literally just crash into that. Now, most of them have osteoporosis, or at least osteopenia, the beginning stages of osteoporosis, and they're going to fracture their hip. They're not practicing to get their nervous system turned on, and their muscles are just deteriorating. Sarcopenia is already there. So you want to avoid that. I had a client that was, really very overweight, close to 350 pounds. She walked with a cane. She never moved at all. And here's what I did. I got a set of exercise bands for her. And I said, look, I'm going to give you a set of exercise bands, and I'm going to give you a protocol to follow. But and I told her what to do, but I said, I only want you to use these exercise bands when the commercials are on TV. That's the only time you're allowed to use them. She said, okay. And she called me up 3 days later. She goes, you tricked me, didn't you? I said, what do you mean? She goes, you know how many commercials there are on TV? So she's watching 4 hours of TV a day. Every 15, you've got 15 minutes of commercials. So imagine that every time you watch television, you got your exercise bands, and there's millions of exercises, but let's say you did some push-ups, standing push-ups, right? Just the commercials are on, right? And then all of a sudden you want to work your balance. All of a sudden now I'm on 1 foot, and I'm doing it, right? Then I'm doing moving balance, and I'm here and here, and then I'm here and here. Suddenly now I'm having a little bit of fun, and I'm getting a lot of fun stuff in. And the commercials are on TV, right? Most people aren't working their back at all. They're definitely not working their triceps, right? Nice thing about these bands, this particular system here, it's called the CLX. They have handles hidden in here. So when I work with people that maybe can't use their hand, I can just put this in here. Even if their hand is missing, I can attach this here on their arm, and I can still stimulate their muscles here, right? So that's really nice. There's a million different exercises I can do with these. The point is that it's unbelievable that we need to use exercise equipment because we live such sedentary lives. When you go to primitive areas in the world, they'd be joking, they'd be laughing at you. Wait a minute, at the end of the day, I want to go to sleep. I don't need to exercise more. But we live in this sedentary culture where you have to. So you need to sneak movement in any way you can. So here's what I do with my clients. I have them get a set of exercise bands. Guess what? They put it in the kitchen. Then they put another set in the front room. Then they put a set of weights in the bedroom. And the bathroom is the one I always have them use. Every time they use the bathroom, as soon as they're done, 10 squats, right on the toilet. In the kitchen, they could do push-ups off the counter, or they could use their bands. But every time they go into a room, they sneak a movement in. And maybe they say, hey, I don't need to do as much strength training, but I do need to, every time I go into the kitchen, I need to squat down and get in this position. Or I need to practice hyperextending, okay? But the point is you want to be moving throughout the day. Does that make sense to you? Because your systems are all turned on. You know, one of the biggest problems we face today is immunological problems. Your immune system is getting bombarded all day long by toxins and poisons and stress. Well, your immune system is your lymphatic system. You can't take a pin and stick it in the body without touching lymph fluid. We have twice the amount of lymph as we do blood. And the lymph is your body's EMTs and paramedics. It's the police department. And your lymph nodes are always x-raying. They're looking for bacteria and viruses and zapping them. Most of your lymph nodes are in your chest region and your groin. This is the best thing in the world for you right here, to stimulate lymph. How many do you do that? You don't. You're doing the opposite. You're doing the absolute worst thing you can do in the world is this. No movement here and no movement here. Nothing could be worse than that. It's the opposite of this. This is what we need. So even if you just stand in place and do this, this would be wonderful for you. But you've got to get that lymphatic system moving. The lymph system doesn't have a pump. You know, your heart's pumping blood. There's 60,000 miles of blood vessels, and we have the same lymph system, but it doesn't have a pump, so it relies on deep diaphragmatic breathing, deep tissue massage, or exercise. Every time you're lifting something, you're pushing, you're pulling, you're moving lymph fluid throughout the body. So that's your immune system. So you need to do that. How many times today, just today, and that goes for all our people here, have your hands been over your head? So how many times today, I'm sure many times, I want to hear lots, but I want to make sure how many. How many times for you would you say? Probably once. Okay, that's not bad. So both hands were over your head today. What were they doing? You're reaching for something. Okay, the bottom line, what I mean is, look, I've been traveling forever. And every time I go on a plane, I see a 70-year-old lady picking up a heavy suitcase, and she's going to blow her rotator cuffs out here. She's never done that movement with load before. And you don't have the flexibility. You don't use it, you're going to lose it. So you need to be practicing these movements. Hands over your head should be a daily thing. Rotating should be daily. Squatting should be daily. When's the last time, and I'm going to ask my friends who are in this room who are runners that I love so much and admire, but let me be fair and honest, when's the last time you moved laterally? When's the last time you moved retropulsion backwards? When's the last time you were on one leg doing a balance drill? We don't do it. You don't do it, you lose it. I got lots of friends that I train and clients and athletes. Right now I'm working with the world champion sumo wrestler. He's the #1 sumo wrestler and judo practitioner, 475 pounds. And he was just filmed, and here's what he said. It's so funny. Yeah, he's from Egypt. Great guy, nice guy. Just became vegan. He's been vegan for over a month now. And fascinating, because when I first trained him, here's exactly the way he tells the story on camera. He's very big. He goes, I've been training since I've been 5 years old. Real low voice. He goes, world champion judo, world champion sumo. He goes, I trained with JP for 10 minutes. He killed me. Now, the reason why is because I'm having him do something that he's never done before. If you're my client and you're great at push-ups, we're never going to do push-ups. If you're great at running, I'm never going to run you. Because I want you to do something that you're not used to doing. And for most everybody here, I'm not going to have most all of you ever sit in a chair, because you're all really good at it, right? So I'm going to have you do the opposite. So the point is every time that we're moving, we're turning on body parts. When you look at professional tennis players, the ulnar and radius, those are thicker and more dominant than the hand they're not being used. When you x-ray it, the ulnar and radius are huge compared to this non-dominant hand, because stress says to the body, hey, you used me a lot today. I'm afraid I might get hurt. I better get bigger to protect myself. When you look at martial arts, who hit a pad, a Makawara pad all day long, those knuckles become bigger. So as you use it, you're stressing it out, the muscle and especially the bone, and it responds by getting stronger. If you don't stress it, it gets weaker. And once you get in your 30s, it's a downward spiral. As you get older, forget it. It's a battle. Your job is to get as strong as you can once you get in your 30s, because you're fighting all day long for it. So you have to do strength training. You have to do some sort of aerobics. You don't need to do hours of aerobics. You can do 12 to 15 minutes for your heart. Anything over that is fine, but just for your heart, you can get a little bit of aerobics in. You got to do some sort of balance training every day, because when's the last time you stood on one foot? So you haven't. So you need to do that. You need to do some sort of flexibility training, and preferably foam rolling. Foam rolling is really, really important. Now, I use a lot of tools with my clients. If you go to johnpierre.com, you'll see me training Ellen DeGeneres, and I do a boot camp for Ellen and her staff. And one of the tools that I use is a jump rope. And this is probably one of my favorite tools in the world to use, because it's so effective for everything, but especially for people who don't have a lot of time to develop bone density. We can develop a lot of bone density pretty quickly jumping rope if they don't like running, let's say, or they're not good at it, or they have the time, or they don't want to do it. And what I've done with the jump rope is a little David Copperfield, because I've taken the jump rope and look. So what I've done is I've just cut a jump rope in half, and now all of a sudden everybody can jump rope, right? So whoever you are, you can jump rope, just like I can, right? You can all jump rope, right? And all I'm doing is having fun with a toy, right? So whoever you are, you can jump rope. I work with people who are in wheelchairs. So when they're in a wheelchair, this little element here, just spinning, is letting them have fun. It's getting some coordination. And then look at, if they're able to move their legs, they're at least getting some tapping here, some bone density. It's better than nothing, right? Now, my other clients who aren't in wheelchairs, they can't jump rope normally. Why would I give them a jump rope and have their feet get caught all the time, and they'll get frustrated, and a half hour's gone by and we didn't get anything done? So all I do is cut my jump rope in half, and now I can do it. So this is a great way for you to develop bone density, and it's a great way to have a circuit, because I can take my band and put it here, and the commercials are on TV, and the first commercial's 30 seconds, so I'm going to jump 30 seconds, commercial's over. I'm going to get my exercise band, and I'm going to just do some squats in my chair. So I'm just going to squat in the chair and come out and press for 30 seconds, right? And then there's still another commercial coming. So I'm going to grab my jump rope. I'm just creating a gentle little circuit, and then I'm just going to be jumping like this now. It's a different one. And I'm just going to go back and forth between each exercise, and I basically just snuck things in, and when you're done, your heart rate will be going, and you'll be breathing hard, no matter how fit you are. Even if we have our fitness freaks here who are in great shape, I guarantee I can make them sweat. I remember I was working with one of the top stuntmen in LA, fascinating guy, just excellent shape. And I said, okay, well, we'll start working out. I got him to go vegan. And he was phenomenal shape and an expert in martial arts and everything. And I decided, well, let's see what can happen in 15 minutes. So after 7 minutes, here's what happened. JP, I can't do anymore. 7 minutes. So I can make it as difficult as I need to. If are you used to lifting 100 pounds? There's a limit to how much you can lift. If you're used to running 26 miles and I add a backpack on, or if I take this band, right, and I attach this here to your waist, and I hold it, and now I'm towing you so you're running against resistance, that's something you're not used to doing. So it's going to be harder. We can always make something harder if we need to. But being fit isn't really about who can do the most and who can lift the most and who can run the longest. That's not really so much fitness anymore. Now you're getting into a whole different level. Many of those things, ultra endurance, are wonderful events, but those definitely cause premature aging. So you better be following a vegan diet if you're not. My friend in Boulder, Scott Jurek, he ran the Appalachian Trail. That's over 2,000 miles. It takes months and months to run that. And I'll never forget, I called him up and I said, hey, do you want to do this lecture with me? There's this event. And he said, oh, what's the date? And I told him, and he said, oh, he goes, I got a run to do. I said, oh, okay. And then I read in the newspaper, he called a run running the Appalachian Trail. These are people that are beyond what we can understand, right? But you don't need to be doing that much extreme stuff to be fit. As a matter of fact, I would argue that that level of fitness, if you're not following a very healthy lifestyle and a vegan diet, is definitely going to cause premature aging and injuries and things like that. So don't think you need to do that. What you do need to do is take simple things like this and just sneak those into your lifestyle. Does that make sense? So 25 years ago, I really started the brain building things in retirement homes. And this was, I was seeing Banjo Joe. That was it. That was the entertainment. That was it. A guy come in and play the banjo. Maybe someone would play the piano, or they would play poker. That was it. And I was like, wait a minute. These seniors, their brains are deteriorating constantly. Their muscles are deteriorating. So I created all these fall prevention programs, brain building programs, and it swept the nation. I was all over the place doing these things. Let me tell you this, the scariest disease I've ever seen working in this field, and I've taught in this field for, let's see, I've been vegan for over 35 years, so about 30 years I've been teaching in this field. The scariest disease by far is dementia. Once the brain starts going, the master computer, it's all over. You've got to do everything in your power to protect your brain as much as possible. Now, obviously, following a plant-based diet is the way to go, because what's good for the heart is good for the brain. Anytime you have an occlusion of the carotid artery, the vertebral artery, once these start getting occluded or closed up and you're not getting enough blood flow to the brain, that's, vascular dementia, right? You're not getting enough blood flow, and that's contributing to problems. You don't get enough sleep, right? Those are things that contribute to it. We don't have a ton of time, but sleep is so important that people they kind of poo-poo it. In our society, it's a competition. I only get 4 hours a night. Oh, I get 3.5. It's like, what? Sleep is when your body is restoring and healing and cleansing. There are parts of your brain called the glymphatic system that's like your immune system, like your lymphatic system. Your neurons are shrinking 30 to 50%. This fluid, the cerebral spinal fluid, is in there cleaning out the amyloid plaque. And this beta amyloid is what they associate with Alzheimer's. So the more sleep you get, the less chance you're going to have of developing dementia. You don't want to limit your sleep. Your diet has to be plant-based as much as possible. You need to open up the blood vessels, so vasodilate. Every time you're exercising, the blood vessels are opening, increasing oxygen. That's great. But then you've got to work your brain. You've got to be doing things that stimulate and challenge your brain. When you're a child, everything is what to you when you're a child? It's new. Every smell, every sound, every feel, every word, every thought is new. So your neurons are developed these dendrites, these branch chain projections that allow these other neurons to communicate. And they keep sprouting like crazy. As a matter of fact, they sprout so much that your body has to prune them. But let me ask you this question. When you're 40, what's new? Same friends, same music. You read the same part of the newspaper. You see the same TV shows. You're not stimulating your brain. You drive the same way home. So your brain gets used to it, and it no longer gets stimulated. It's like exercising. When I work with runners all the time, they're great at going forward, and then I ask them to move laterally, and they can't because they're not used to it, right? It's not their fault. So it's the same thing with the brain. So one thing that you need to do every single day is to challenge your brain. How many people in here do crossword puzzles? Okay, how many do Sudoku? So the people who do Sudoku, give your Sudoku to the crossword people puzzle, and the crossword people you need to do what you don't like. See, if you're good at crossword puzzles, then you need to start doing something you don't like to do, right? So you want to do different things. So let's say, for instance, let's think of something that's an easy. Let's think of the word mango. How do we spell mango? M-A-N-G-O. Let's spell it backwards now. Beautiful. Now let's go to Washington. How do you spell Washington? W-A-S-H-I-N-G-T-O-N. Let's spell it backwards. Hey, some of you young people are like shaking your head like, what? The point is when you have that pause there, when you're thinking Washington, you're like, is it N-O-O-T? That's what we want. That's what's causing these connections to grow because your brain's working. So it's little tiny things, just like you can sneak movement in throughout the day, you can sneak mental challenges throughout the day, okay? But you want to be doing something that's different all the time. So let me give you an example. Let's do a quick one here. When I was in retirement homes, I would ask them to write their name every day when they came into class with their opposite hand. So one of the things you want to do every day is get a pencil or pen and with your opposite hand, try to sign your name 10 times, okay? That's one thing. Every time you're at home and you use a remote control, use your opposite hand. When you push the elevator button, use it. Preferably, I hope you're taking the stairs if it's safe, but if you are using an elevator, push the button. You get used to using your opposite hand as much as you can. Not carrying hot coffee or something dangerous, but little menial tasks do that, okay? So use it as much as you can. Your brain needs to be engaged as much as your body does, if not more, okay? Because when you lose your body, you can regain your body, you can regain your muscles and regain flexibility, but you can't regain your brain. So it's like kind of cobwebs that keep growing or mold, they take over the brain. So you do want to do everything in your power never to lose your brain. And as I said earlier, a plant-based diet, obviously, exercise, fresh air, low stress. Stress is probably one of the biggest contributors to brain problems. There's an area in your brain called the hippocampus that's really responsible for memory and learning. And when we look at people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, the hippocampus actually shrinks. And certain areas in the brain, the amygdala, which are responsible, they're kind of like the smoke detector of the body, those are lighting up all the time, and they're causing this stress response, high cortisol levels, everything. Cortisol is very dangerous to your system when it's prolonged and chronic, especially for your brain. So you want to do everything to keep that low. You're very lucky here because people have that Hawaiian attitude, that it's a little bit slower attitude, and it's a little kinder, but on the mainland, we don't see that as much, and so the stress levels are higher. And so you need to make sure you're getting breathing in, some meditation, some mindfulness practices, exercise, things that lower cortisol and keep you centered and balanced. I'm not saying you have to be, like I went to India to teach, and you're literally doing yoga and meditation 7-8 hours a day. You're doing it, most of the day. And the monks are walking around in robes and just calm. There's no TV. People are eating in silence. Wonderful for you, just not realistic, right? I mean, it'd be great if we could do it. It's not realistic. So we have to be realistic. Sneak movement in, sneak mindfulness and meditation in when you can. But we're living in a normal society, okay? Okay. Last part. When I first wrote my book, I was all happy to be able to get this information to society and everything. But the last 2 chapters of my book are the most important part of everything I do. The last 2 chapters are what I call the universal antidotes. And this is if you didn't like anything so far, great. But this part you've got to like, and you got to listen and memorize and embrace it, because it's the universal antidote. Everywhere we go today, we have the big killers. Anger, jealousy, hatred, rage, envy. We have all these dark energies that are destroying us as people. They're destroying us as a community. They destroy us as a nation. They destroy us as a planet. And you're exposed to them from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. You're being bombarded by these negative energies all day long. Because the news is not positive, it's negative. You're around people, coworkers and bosses that are coming down, and they're negative. You're around people that are negative, and they're what we call energy vampires because they're not balanced. So you're around this all day long. And the antidote to that is love, compassion, joy, happiness. Those are the things that are the light that go into the darkness, and they light everything up. So I want you to remember that when you meet somebody, always remind yourself, I have no idea where they've been, but I'm going to give them that antidote of love and compassion. Thank you guys so very much for being here.
Mahalo to all of you for coming, and have a safe return home. Good night, everyone.